And the senior pastor said something to me that has just stuck with me. It just hit me in my chest, took the breath out of me. He said, Chris, my greatest fear is that in a decade or two, this will be a nice place to build a church. Think about that. A church just like this one. In a decade or two, sure would be a nice place to build a church. Churches that were once vibrant places of worship filled with children laughing and screaming and getting in trouble and being drugged down the aisle by their parents, kicking and screaming. And they were filled with the love of God. They are now shells of days gone by. They only talk about remember when. I want to be honest with you, church. If we don't place a higher priority on passing our faith along to the next generation, that is our children, our grandchildren, that is other people's children and other people's grandchildren, that is 20-somethings and that is 30-somethings. And I guess now that I'm over 50, that's 40-somethings too. Next generation. If we don't place a higher priority on passing our faith along to them, engaging them in their faith, we run the risk of this being one of those churches, 1 or 2 generations away from closing its doors. Nice place to build a church. And every person in our entire church must view it as personal. As a personal responsibility to invest in the lives of children, youth, and families. And what would happen if we leaned into that purpose? If we all leaned into that purpose. Some of y'all may be saying, I've raised my kids and my grandchildren. Dolly and I are there. We are thankful that we don't have kids at home now. It's hard. Being a parent's hard. I say that tongue in cheek. We loved our kids. We love them now that they're gone. What would happen if we leaned into that purpose? If you've raised your kids, your grandchildren, let me ask you, how would you feel about your children or grandchildren telling you about how they have found a church that loves them and their kids? They've got people that take them out to lunch, that buy presents for their kids, that send them cards on their birthdays, that show up at their kids' activities. Would you feel like, oh my gosh, they're being a surrogate grandparent. Don't love on my children. No, you'd say, thank God there are people who love on my children and grandchildren and point them toward God. What would happen if we leaned into that purpose? It's time that we get serious and we get real when it comes to prioritizing a personal investment in the next generation of believers. What's up with kids today? I think they're seeking real relationships with people who exhibit the fruits of the Spirit, who authentically and unapologetically live out their faith before them. The question is, will we be that kind of church?